Welcome back to Sunday Vibes, one and all. It's me, Chris and Pat back in the pub to answer your burning questions. The first one was sent in by David Strimmer, who says, one player each top 6 team can't afford to lose this summer. Pato, you want to kick us off? Who can't afford to lose a certain player?
Whoa, well, should we start at the top of the table in Manchester City?
Yeah.
Because obviously the rumour is that they're going to potentially let Leroy Sané go to Bayern, though Bayern have said that the amount of money that City want is obscene. And in fairness, why not? I mean, like, if you're going to replace that kind of special talent, then I would want ridiculous money to do it. But I do think they actually can afford to let him go. Like, I'm not saying I would let him go, but I think, I wrote about this the other day, I think there are maybe 2 clubs in world football where he doesn't automatically start. And those are probably Liverpool and Man City.
Yeah.
And I think with Sterling, with Bernardo Silva is obviously moving back a little bit, but with Sterling, with Aguero, who's still good, with Gabi Jesus, who's clearly going to be like, you know, an absolute superstar, I'm just not sure that if you can get 150 mil for him, you really fight the battle to keep hold of him. And also, just as a fan, I want to watch him play every week. For me, if I'm Man City, I'm much more concerned about keeping hold of Sterling, Bernardo, and probably Laporte. Those are the guys who I'm just like, and Edison actually.
Surely
as well. Those are the guys who I'm like, we lose those, we're in trouble.
An element of financial fair play as well, wherein they want to recruit more talent, 70 million on Rodrigo, 70 million on João Felix. They need to balance the book somewhere, and this seems like an ideal opportunity while not making the team significantly weaker. Like, it's not as good without him. He's probably the best substitute, that sounds crazy to even say out loud, doesn't it, in world football right now, but yeah, I would tend to agree.
I don't know
City could suck that up pretty easy.
I don't know whether, like, would Bayern... I don't see Bayern spending 150 million on a player, though. Like, I feel like they're more likely to go out and get, like, a more middling talent for, like, 50 and hope he improves. Or, like, go and spend 75, 80 on Nicolas Pepe than they are 150 on Sané. Like, I could see them spending sort of between 80 and 100, but I just don't think City will do it at that level.
I think maybe 80, 90 for Luca Hernandez would intimate they are ready to participate in the mind-boggling numbers of football in 2019.
In the same summer, like, that's the only issue. Like, I agree that says that they're, like, getting more realistic about prices, but I'm not sure that they can do that and then go and spend, like, especially when you think that someone like Dybala might be around for about 100 mil, then I think, do I go for Sané at 150 or do I go for Dybala at 100?
Is 150 the price touted? Is that like nailed on?
No, but I think, you know, like, we constantly see in the press things where they're like, Sané could go for 80 mil, and we as fans are just like, that doesn't sound realistic at all as a price.
I read from Beckenbauer this morning that he was saying we're poised to move for him, but he's not decided whether he wants to leave Manchester City yet, and he's saying that in order for Bayern to take it to the next level, he wants Sané to come out publicly and say, I'd be willing to leave Manchester City. I would quite like to, you know, I see a future at Bayern. A little bit like what Real Madrid did to Christian Eriksen in weeks gone by. Well, in the week gone by.
Yeah, I just don't see this one getting over the line. Like, I think he'll probably still be at Man City, and I agree. I don't think he is necessarily the right answer to this question, because I think they can afford to lose it. I think, like you said, Laporte is a more identifiable, clear player they just can't lose.
Yeah, and Edison, and I mean, we've said Fernandinho in the past, but they look like they're going to replace him with Rodri.
What do you think about that move?
They're making smart moves. Yeah, I think he'd be great. Atletico Madrid get to turn a huge profit on him, which is always kind of on their mind, isn't it? That's part of their consciousness. They like to play the transfer game. But it makes sense. He was touted as a Sergi Busquets replacement a year ago. He's very much in that mould where he puts up great defensive numbers but can still contribute on the attacking end. I was just going to say, going back to Leroy Sané, if Liverpool, they're getting increasingly serious about the likes of De Ligt, aren't they? If they're going to keep strengthening significantly, then I would imagine that would dampen Manchester City's stance when it comes to selling someone like Leroy Sané. Liverpool are only going to get stronger, so I don't think we're going to see any key players as a result maybe leave Manchester City. I think you might see an unhappy Leroy Sané in January.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the summer, yeah, I think he stays. What about you guys with the Rodri move then?
I'm quite excited about Rodri. Obviously, they were desperate to replace Fernandinho, or at least find a player that could rotate with Fernandinho last summer, weren't they? They missed out on Jorginho. I think that move Pep kind of expected to have been locked down, and then Sarri joined Chelsea, so 11th hour got nicked out from under his nose. I also think he was keen on Fred, but obviously didn't pull up any trees at Manchester United. Now Rodri, at 80 million euros, I think is quite a lot of money.
That's his release clause, right?
Yeah, they're going to have to probably pay his release clause, obviously having bids rejected already. So,
I mean, Atletico Madrid.
He's a great player. He's very young.
I've also seen things where like Rodri's not sure. Like I've seen that Man City are really keen to pay the clause, but Rodri himself is a little bit undecided as to whether he wants to leave.
I think he'll get sure though, right? Because it looks like there's going to be a big rebuild at Atletico Madrid this summer.
Yeah.
And I think if he sees, I don't know if Griezmann will actually leave, to be honest, because I don't know if anyone will pay the money. But if he does see Griezmann go out the door, he sees that whole backline disappear as well, then I would think, yeah, maybe this is the time to go to what is still clearly the best team in Europe.
Yeah, it's a pretty grim picture at Atletico Madrid.
Yeah, we discussed them pretty in depth on the podcast this week, don't we? The Extra Time podcast is out, link in the description below.
Finally.
First one in 3 weeks. And our moves for players of late have stalled, haven't they? So yeah, Real Alvarez, they were prepared to pay his 30 million release clause to replace the outgoing Godin, Fran Felipe Luis, like we've said, but they've kind of just ended up with the guy from the 30-year-old from Porto,
Felipe, yeah.
Who's sort of a plan B. So things, the transfer plans haven't exactly picked up any great pace yet, have they? Who are we on next?
Liverpool. Let's talk about Liverpool, because this morning's front page of L'Equipe is that they've agreed a deal with Lille for Nicolas Pepe, apparently at 80 million euros, which seems like a lot of money. But obviously that's the going rate for
They
it.
need another elite attacker though, don't they?
And can offer options on the right and in the centre as well, so covers a couple of different positions. Do we think that those are the sort of areas they can't afford to lose? Centre forward, like a Bobby Firmino? I feel like Bobby Firmino is a player they really can't afford to lose at the moment.
I feel like they could actually deal with losing Mane or Firmino at some point.
Yeah.
Like, maybe not now, but I think they've spent so much money over the last couple of years that in order to continue buying young talent and regenerating, at some point you imagine they might need to sell one of those forwards for big money.
Coutinho-esque.
And the last one you'd sell would obviously be Salah. Firmino is the oldest, so that would make maybe more sense to sell, but I think it kind of depends who comes in. like Barcelona would have been the obvious suitors for Firmino, but obviously there's that special clause where they'd have to spend extra money if they wanted to get a Liverpool player. And Mane is much more on the kind of Real Madrid side of things, or Bayern side of things.
Feels like it, doesn't it?
But neither of those are going to spend as much, especially with Hazard going. So I mean, but there again, like they actually are in a position, unlike Man City, where they've got way more issues. Like as in, if they lose particular players, you'll see a massive downgrade. So they couldn't afford to lose Robertson, they couldn't afford to lose Trent, they couldn't afford to lose Virgil van Dijk or Alisson or Salah. If they lose any of those, then not only do they get quite a bit worse, I think they're actually in quite a bit of trouble. And I'd expect that next season, even if they strengthen the squad, I'd still expect them to come back about 10 points. I'd expect them to be closer to the 86, 88 mark next season.
Which is still pretty bloody impressive.
It would still be amazing, but they overperformed a little bit to get where they were. And when you look at Man City's kind of numbers, you think actually this is exactly where you'd expect them to be. Whereas Liverpool this season were slightly ahead of where you'd expect them to be. But
yeah, I'm kind of in agreement with you. I think they just can't afford to lose a Mo Salah at this moment, because the replacement is like so hard to find of that level. And obviously they're not going to lose Van Dijk. I think he's close to agreeing a new deal at Anfield with improved terms, which will be pretty decent business. I'm imagining that most of those players will probably be locked down to better contracts after that Champions League win, or at least see clauses activated within them. So they should be okay, I think, Liverpool. I don't see Liverpool losing anyone this summer.
I mean,
at all.
Such as has been the transformation under Jurgen Klopp. They're no longer a feeder club for the very elite clubs, are they? I don't think if a Barcelona came in now for a Mo Salah in a similar way that they did for Felipe Coutinho, that the player would be all that inclined to leave. Like they're in the best situation they've been in the last 4 or 5 years. This kind of feels like the apex of the Jurgen Klopp project. So like if they can't use this momentum to really challenge for the league next season, then when would they realistically? I don't think Liverpool will lose any key players. I think Jurgen Klopp has created a kind of an atmosphere, a team, a relationship with the fans wherein they are a hugely appealing prospect, to play for on and off the pitch, which wasn't necessarily the case when he came in 4 or 5 years ago, and they're finishing 7th, and their best players like Luis Suarez, and even in years gone by under Rafa, when they were losing sort of Xabi Alonso and Mascherano, when they'd had an exceptional season, they were always bracing themselves to lose the exceptional player of that season. I don't think that's going to be the case this year, and if they can strengthen with the likes of Nicolas Pepe, I don't see any reason they won't run Manchester City really close, particularly with particularly with Klopp, really kind of tinkering his approach to make sure that people, can sustain their form across the course of a season. James Milner, it'd be a real loss. I don't think he's signed the new contract yet.
I think his contract actually runs out next year. There's a few mixed reports. Like, some people he's available on a free transfer this summer, but James Pearce at the Liverpool Echo, who's really reliable for Liverpool news, said that the actual contract runs out in 2020, not 2019. Okay. So they should be all right keeping him for another year. He won't be desperate to leave.
I just keep re-upping his contract.
So would I, yeah.
There's some. And what's great about, I suppose, kind of Liverpool, they've already got rid of Sturridge, they've already got rid of Moreno. There's some very clear players that they've kind of they've outprogressed them, as in they've gone to a new level, and they've kind of left certain players of a certain talent level behind. Like maybe Dejan Lovren might be sold, I just think what a place to be in.
I just think they may need to sell at some point. Unless you're Man City or PSG, at some point you might need to do a little bit of turnover, just to keep things fresh. And what Liverpool have been great at in the last few seasons is recruiting really well. So what we'll see over the next few seasons is whether they're as good at selling at the right time. Yeah, right. Let's touch quickly on Chelsea, because this one seems like it's nailed on. Eden Hazard, £88 million. Is it enough money? It's the best you can get, I think. I feel like it's really cheap. What are you going to get with a year left on his contract? And you're kind of shafted, really. Given context, getting nearly £100 million when he's got a year left on his contract. Genius business by Madrid, though. It is fine, but Chelsea shouldn't have allowed themselves to get to this position where they're. It's come via the turnover of management, hasn't it? And the sort of increasing ambivalence of the owner. We've said this in episodes gone by. Clearly, there's not a stronger directive coming from Abramovich now, and I don't think managers now assume that they're going to be given an absolute war chest when they go to Chelsea. So they're in a situation where it looks like Sarri. I think Sarri is probably the one the one figurehead at the club they can't afford to lose this summer if they want to sustain 4th place or 3rd place. It's a bit of a weird one, the Sarri situation, because now it seems like Juventus are like, we don't really want to pay the £5 million clause to get him to the club, and it's now become a bit of a issue for Chelsea, which is weird. When they look around, Aaron Ramsey on 400k a week, fine, but salary for £5 million. I think when they look around, you might see them change their stance. I think they'll end up doing it, but what might happen is that they just leave it a little bit later to see if Chelsea budge a little bit with wanting to get Frank Lampard through the door, obviously the Blues. So I think Sarri will become Juventus manager. I'd be really surprised if he's not in the dugout of the Juventus Stadium next season. And when it comes to crucial guys at the club, I agree they should try and keep Sarri, but I think if you could tempt somebody like a Jardim or whatever, then I say the choice. I think after Hazard goes, Kante is obviously the most important next guy at the club. As long as Kante's there, the midfield works. If you've Kante in your midfield will work somehow. Yeah, still got Drinkwater as well. Yeah, exactly. Don't forget about Drinkwater, Barkley. Vital to keep Danny. But they've also kept Callum Hudson-Odoi by the looks of it. I think, did he sign that new contract yesterday? He was trending on Twitter. I can't remember whether it actually was confirmed. But again, just as with Hazard, they are paying for letting that contract go down, because 100k a week to a guy who's 18 and is not a regular for your first team and will be coming off an ACL injury, that is not. Or Achilles. Tendon, it was Achilles tendon. That is pretty risky. Yeah. Right, Eriksen telling the Danish media that he wants to leave Tottenham Hotspur this coming summer. That's a big loss. I'd be a little bit miffed if I was a Tottenham fan. And he has said staying at Tottenham is not off the cards, but he also very much positioned it as a plan B. Yeah. He said he wanted to
not just move on to experience something new, which is probably fair after 4 or 5 years of killing
And he
it at
name
Tottenham.
dropped Madrid.
Yeah, but I want to take a step up, he said. And that might have been not inadvertent, that might have been a dig at the kind of transfer policy, the wage policy that Levy has employed at the club the last kind of 3 or 4 years, which has kind of seen them stagnate to an extent. But really good kind of rumblings at the start of this transfer window. Giovanni Lo Celso for 50 to 60 mil. Like if you're in that squad, that must be very heartening to hear that they're going after that calibre player for that fee. But if Real Madrid offered me James Rodriguez and money, I would snap their hand off. I'd send Christian Eriksen straight to the Bernabeu.
Well. Like I was looking at them today, like the rumoured names James and Isco, one of those two, and a bit of cash for Eriksen. I would take.
Do you feel like? I feel like now is the only time when Tottenham could get someone like a James Rodriguez. Like he would only gravitate towards the very top clubs, you know, and Tottenham are getting there, but they're not quite in that elite band yet, are they? But his reputation's taken a bit of a beating at Bayern. Only started 13 games this campaign. Still contributed to 10 goals. Still over 2.5 key passes a game, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like,
and lots of defensive work as well.
If any other year, if Chelsea didn't have an impending transfer ban, if Manchester United actually had some joined up thinking at the club, if Dybala does move on and Juventus are looking for a kind of budget replacement, a worthwhile replacement, then he would kind of walk into most starting lineups. But it's kind of like the perfect storm wherein, you know, getting him at Tottenham might not be unrealistic.
He's been and you know, Eriksen will be. I think actually the person who appreciates Eriksen the most in the world is Pochettino. Like Eriksen has been the first name on Poch's team sheet for his entire time at Spurs. I can't remember. I don't know how many games he played this last season, but I think at the end of last season I looked at his statistics and he'd missed something like 6 league games. Since Pochettino arrived.
Still 20 goal involvements again this season.
He will play every game that he's fit if Pochettino's in charge, and he will get you 20 goals and assists in the league.
And it still feels like he works in 2 or 3 systems. Like when Poch moves between a 3 and a 4, he still adapts. When he plays Heung-min Son or Kane and he plays more, like Eriksen's still there and
set
adapts.
pieces as well. I mean, like he's just got every possible quality you would want in a midfielder. And so if Real Madrid had the money, like he would have been a great sort of Modric replacement. He's a guy who can play deep in midfield. Amazing distributor, tons of defensive work, much quicker than he's given credit for as well.
I think for Real, it'll probably come down to if they can't get Pogba. I still think they want Pogba, and if they can't get Pogba, they'll probably get Eriksen, which is like obviously brilliant business.
If they got the money,
how much do you think they'd have to pay for Pogba then?
To pay for Pogba,
150.
Yeah, 150 to 200, which would be a lot of money for Real Madrid, given that they've already spent over 200 on Militao, Hazard. Who else have they
Rodrigo from Corinthians, but obviously that was last summer.
Maybe they could kick in some assets though as well. You know, like they've got some players. They've got tons of left backs. They've got tons of right backs actually as well. Like maybe you'd be inclined to take a couple of players off them.
Let's move on. Should we move on to Manchester United then? Slips in quite nicely there. Just before we move on to Arsenal, the player, Man United just can't afford to lose Pogba. Pogba or De Gea, the 2 players Manchester United just can't afford to lose right now.
Sure. De
Gea really heavily linked to PSG over the last few days, obviously with Buffon announcing that he's leaving the club. PSG are apparently really interested in him, given he's got a year left on his current contract, which is a disastrous situation for United to be in, because we're just over a barrel. And then Pogba, who doesn't want to be at the club, I think is fairly clear. Rightly so as well. I wouldn't want to be at Manchester United if I was Paul Pogba either. And obviously has every major club in the world as his suitors. It looks like it's going to be straight up between Juventus and Real Madrid. And Man United now have to make some pretty tough decisions. Whether we take 150 million from Real Madrid or whether we go, okay, we want Dybala as part of a deal from Juventus, if that's going to happen.
It should be amazing.
I think that's probably more the route Man United want to go.
They've actually inquired.
Yeah, Juventus have inquired. So if they want Pogba, United are going to say we want Dybala. I think that's very clear.
Yeah. I feel like this Champions League campaign was hugely damaging in terms of PSG's ability to pull in the top brass, and then you kind of couple that with Mbappe's speech where he kind of indirectly said, maybe it's time to reevaluate my career at the age of 19, absolutely obscure, and kind of Neymar's increasing unhappiness at not being allowed to, either return to Barcelona or at least kind of temper a move to Real Madrid. So I don't think you're going to lose David De Gea to PSG.
I hope not. I could see it happening though.
But Paul Pogba, this narrative has just been building, and even Jose departing has not extinguished it, has it?
No, and he's just unhappy, isn't he, in Manchester? It's got that feel of a player that needs a fresh start. And I think wherever he goes, he's going to be amazing, which is even more frustrating.
Yeah.
Because he's very clearly not had fun at Manchester United, and wherever he goes, be it Juventus, he's going to go back to fans that love him and adore him and don't bear a grudge for him leaving in the first place because they got such a big fee. Yeah. Or Real Madrid, where he's going to be the star midfield man for the next 6 or 7 years.
And we kind of want to see him at the tip of a diamond, don't we? Doing what he does. I mean, he can dictate play from the base of midfield, but we want to see him as far up the pitch as possible. And Manchester United are also in for James Maddison, apparently. And that kind of suits the profile of player that Solskjaer has talked up in the press. Daniel James. Kind of so on and so forth, this young British kind of almost recreate Fergie's fledglings sort of vibe. So if you do go in for James Maddison, do you think that does signal that actually United are willing?
I think we'll only go in
to part ways with Pogba.
I'd imagine that when Juventus inquired about Pogba, United were probably like, let's just assess our options. Let's inquire about Maddison and see where his cards on the table. If Pogba does leave, they bring in a Maddison and another central midfielder.
Yeah, because you'll need 2 players to cover Pogba. Maddison's going to do the attacking, but he's not going to do the distribution or the ball progression. The
sort of thing where United might go for a Tanguy and Ndombele and a Maddison to replace Pogba. If Pogba was to leave for a Juventus,
if
bring
you got that,
Dybala in as part of the deal, which is
if you got those 2 players, that'd probably be an upgrade.
It'd be interesting, but Pogba's so key to everything. Runs our entire midfield. There's no ball progression from anyone else in the midfield. There's no drive. There's no goals. There's very little defensive output. Without Pogba, we are a shambles in midfield. Because then you're looking at Matic, McTominay and Fred as a midfield 3, given that Herrera's gone and Mata's gone as well.
But this actually works quite nicely as we go into Arsenal. I think when you're really, really reliant on one player, it's obviously great to have that player, but actually in the long run, that's not a good thing for your squad because one injury totally destroys you. So if you were to let Pogba go and bring in 2 midfielders who can do some of the same work, then I think overall that's going to make you less fragile as a club. And the same's true with Arsenal. We're hearing rumours about Aubameyang potentially going to China, which I imagine would be for an outrageous sum of money, or Lacazette's getting interest from Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, and I think he'd actually work pretty well for both of those. I don't want to say goodbye to either one of them, but I would sell one of them. If big money came in...
To give better balance to your side.
Well, yeah, say you got 90 to 100 for Aubameyang, which going on the basis of what China have paid in the past feels probably about right. Yeah. They paid 60. They paid 50 mil for Teixeira, and they paid 60 mil for Oscar. Then you could probably get someone like Memphis Depay and somebody else like say Joel Linton in for that money, and that I think would give you actually overall a more versatile, stronger attack. You wouldn't have quite the elite level centre forward, but you'd have way more goals and creativity around the squad. And right now Arsenal are in a position where say you keep Aubameyang and he just gets an injury at the beginning of the season, you kind of. Whereas and the sensible thing to do is to plan for those sorts of problems. So I don't want to let one of them go, but if say somebody offered big money for Lacazette, I'd probably take it. If somebody offered obscene money for Aubameyang, I'd probably take it.
So
but
you
not
prefer
both.
To sell Lacazette?
I think overall, yeah, just because he's not quite the level of player, and he's not. If he were 26, then I'd say keep him. But because he's 28 and Aubameyang's 30, or it's going to be 30 this month. Overall, I think it makes more sense to keep Aubameyang and buy in a couple of young forwards.
It's hard to replace Aubameyang's decisiveness, isn't it? His ability to finish. But neither him or Lacazette are taking over 3 shots per game in the league. So if you're looking to just directly replace output for 100 million, it'd be hard to say no to. I don't think Arsenal should sell Aubameyang. But for that sum...
Especially if it allows you to sell a centre-back.
It'd be very hard to turn down.
I don't know. I mean, when you talk about replacing output, you can replace shot numbers with Aubameyang, but the shot quality Aubameyang gets is absolutely
so the decisiveness, like I said, so getting
that's
those
really difficult.
Generating those high quality chances in the box, but also his numbers. I mean, they've not. they've come down a little bit, haven't they? And you're thinking, in an ideal world, keep Aubameyang and Lacazette for one more season, because it is the attack, despite only generating like 12.3 shots per night as a team, which is very mid-table. It is the attack that has bailed you out time and time again, hasn't it? So
and Leno.
And you feel, and Leno, particularly towards the end of the season, you feel like Unai Emery is not just one window away from balancing matters out. Like, it might be worth keeping them for another year while he addresses the bigger issues at heart.
But it depends whether you can. Like, that's the thing, because of the rumours of limited money, though I think there's more money than we're being told, because we were told the same money last year, and since then commercial deals have gone up, and also Arsenal always tend to leak, oh, we've only got about, like five quid to like rebuild the squad. But I think that often the way to get these rebuilds done more quickly is just to accept some pain. And 2 years ago I said we should have sold Sanchez, taken the money and rebuilt. Then last year I said we should have sold Ramsey, taken the money and rebuilt. We haven't done it. Now this year I'd say sell one of these guys, take the money and rebuild. And at some point you've got to face the fact that doing something unpopular but in the long run being better off is better than not doing something unpopular but in the long run being shit, which makes you unpopular anyway, which is the situation we see now. Like, Arsenal fans are always going to complain. They're always going to say we should sell Iwobi, we shouldn't sell Aubameyang, or we should sell Guendouzi isn't good enough at 19, but we shouldn't sell Xhaka or whatever. Like people are always going to be like...
Xhaka's been heavily linked. Inter Milan, for, what was it, 30, 40 million euros, would you sell him?
It's for more than we paid for him. And yeah, 100% I'd sell him. Like, it gives you another job to do, but if you get that amount of money for him, I think that there are great midfield options around.
Only
like, if Tielemans available for 40, if you could entice him, which I don't think you necessarily could as Arsenal, send Xhaka out and pay the same money to bring in Tielemans. That's a clear upgrade.
That would be a great move.
Even Songare and Benacer back from Empoli, you could get those two for probably about 30 mil put together. That is an improvement on Xhaka.
Only Inter Milan, aka the West Ham of Serie A, would be willing to part ways with 40 million plus now.
For Granit Xhaka.
For Granit Xhaka.
To be fair, I think he'd actually fit Italy quite well, and it's Conte who wants him. I mean, to be honest with you, you do see these guys getting a lot of time at the base of midfield. I think of how mediocre Pjanic has been the last couple of years, and yet he still gets a ton of time on the ball. I kind of feel like I could see Conte working out a system that protects him in the way that he worked out a system to protect, first Pirlo, then Vidal, a bunch of different guys, at different stages.
I was looking at Inter Milan yesterday, though. I think the areas that they are potentially going to struggle quite badly under Conte is in the wing back, because I think he is going to adopt that 3-4-3 or 3-5-2 kind of system as he did at Chelsea. And I was looking at the squad yesterday, and obviously Godin's arriving, not too bad. So you're probably looking at that back three of being something like De Vrij, Godin and Skriniar, which is quite exciting. But then in the wing back areas, you're looking at sort of Asamoah, a left wing back.
But they've got Vishalko on the right, and they've got.
I don't think Vishalko they'll renew. I don't think they'll take him on.
They've got Dalbert as well, though, on the left. I think he might play more than D'Ambrosio or Asamoah.
Yeah, Dalbert though put up less than 1,000 minutes this season.
I know. He's never quite worked there.
And Vishalko wasn't even included in the squad list after January for them. Obviously, he had that serious knee injury, and his career is shot to pieces. He's had 15 injuries in the last 4 years.
Jesus.
3 of them have been major knee injuries. He's been not included for the last 6 months in the Inter Milan squad list. So hasn't played a single minute of football since January. Atletico don't want him back. Inter don't want him. So he's under contract until 2022 with very few suitors because of his injury record. And then you look at the signings they're linked to. Victor Moses, being taken from Chelsea for 8 million euros.
If you can get bargain signings, though, I don't think that's the worst thing, because certain areas of their squad are really solid.
Felipe Luis is apparently coming in as a left wing back.
That makes no sense to me. But you do look at players there, and you're like Lautaro Martinez and Mauro Icardi, and actually Keita as well.
I think he'll return to Monaco, won't they?
Keita.
Yeah,
I would 100% keep him. He's actually been really good when he's played this season. And also, this was under Spalletti. Got a new manager come in, might get.
I think they've said
Karamo will come back from Bordeaux as well.
They've basically said no to Keita after he was injured on that prank show. He pulled his hamstring doing a prank show when the board told him not to do the prank show.
And he's still so good.
And Keita's when he
But it seems like they've signed Edin Dzeko anyway, like for 11 mil.
I mean, when Keita came into the side and actually prospered, it wasn't on that left-hand side, was it? It was as a centre forward in Mauro Icardi's absence, and now Mauro Icardi's kind of agreed to come back into the fold, and reparations have been made. Maybe keeping Keita is less important, but Roma letting Dzeko go is a weird one. Their second. Contribute to the second most goals in that side, I think, after El Shaarawy put up 11, so not a vintage season attacking wise for them. Not a vintage season defensively either, I think conceded 48 goals. But like we discussed on the podcast, the underlying numbers kind of highlighted that this is their defensive issues, slightly more endemic than just this one season. They've been slipping for quite some time. But yeah, letting him go
to
a direct Champions League rival for not much money, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense. But are we going to kind of foray into Europe now?
Let's go over to Italy. Let's talk about Juventus, I guess, because Paulo Dybala, we mentioned him earlier. Do we think he's a player that can't be let go this summer, especially if Sarri comes in?
There are rumours they're going to go and get Chiesa, and if their wide options end up being Chiesa and Bernardeschi, I suppose it's not that terrible to let Dybala go, but Dybala is a superstar. I would have done everything I could to keep Dybala. They're actually the player who looks like they could leave this summer and who I would be really worried about letting go, João Cancelo. Yeah. Cancelo was unbelievable this season, and Juventus, as much as people think that they do it through the midfield with guys like Pjanic and Matuidi and Bentancur, like all their ball progression is down the wings. All of it, absolutely all of it this season. Their progressive passes and runs have come from Alexandro, from Cancelo, and when he's played from Spinazzola even. Like that is how they get the ball forward down the wings every single game if you watch them.
There was points that season where when they weren't, when they were grinding out sort of victories or they couldn't unlock a defence, João Cancelo would have to play right wing. That's how important he was in terms of progressing the ball.
And he's like linked to City for like 60 mil.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, like he would be the ideal Pep Guardiola, like right back. He's incredibly fast, huge dribble numbers, also really sound technically, so he can move into midfield. He could basically push up on the right, and if your idea is that Bernardo Silva is going to play on the right, you need somebody to go outside him, and João Cancelo is the perfect guy. But if I were Juve, I would think, we spent a ton of money on this guy, and we nailed this signing. Why would we sell him?
Yeah, I think he's also a player that they couldn't sell. Should we go to some other clubs in Europe then? Some of the big boys. What about Atletico? Because they are in the midst of a disastrous summer, by all accounts. Can they afford to let Griezmann go or Rodri go?
Yeah, I mean the attack has pretty much been it's been Griezmann this entire season, hasn't it? I think he's contributed to around 40% of their output, which, of course, if you lose him and you've got Diego Costa, who's just got no cartilage left at the club, then not only are you losing kind of a generation's worth of talent at the back, you're also looking at an attack that is powered by Tamar Lamar, who hasn't been all that prolific. Alvaro Morata, who's been promising since he arrived on loan, but it's about getting the ball up to him, right? As well, it's about the progression in that side as well. I mean, the player that we would sound out, going back to the question, is kind of
can't afford to lose.
They can't afford to lose. Yeah, I mean, would still be Griezmann for me at this stage. But I've heard that should he go, that Diego Simeone will have a lot of money to play with.
Yeah, he's going to have to.
Dybala and Depay have been rumoured, and they'd actually be great replacements for Griezmann, I think. But
the
midfield's quite solid.
I would say they're going to have to do what Atleti do quite a lot of the time. They kind of unearth a player at that 30 to 40 million pound region and hope that they get seismic output from them. They are pretty good at turning over their centre forwards, aren't they? I mean, they've not defensively, I suppose. The only kind of silver lining they can take from Godin, Felipe Luis and Juanfran leaving is that this isn't the defence any longer of 13, 14, 14, 15. I think statistically still the best, only conceded 28 goals. Getafe close behind on around 35. I think Valencia on 35 as well. But maybe a little bit fortunate in that regard. I think if you look at the expected goals, probably should have conceded a few more.
41, that's a pretty big swing.
Yeah, so Oblak might be a candidate as well for a player they can't lose.
Bingo, and Oblak. So the silver lining there is that they've got the utmost out of this rear guard, and they should be able to walk off into the sunset. Diego Godin's getting kind of one last big payday into Milan, isn't it? So it's time to replace them, but the frightening thing is, all at the same time.
And all
they've let
for zero.
Arias, they've let Johnny go, they've let Vishalko go.
They got a ton of money though. Like, I mean, they got tons of money from Luka Hernandez. They'll get tons of money for Rodrigo. There's 150 mil right there. If Griezmann goes, that'll be another 100 to 120.
My worry is
that's
that,
a lot of money.
My worry is that like it feels like all of the players that are being bought, people are just going, yeah, I'll just pay the buyout. Like if Thomas Partey, somebody pays that 50 mil. If Rodrigo's 80 mil goes, if Griezmann's 120 mil goes, all at buyout clause level, you're as much money as you have to spend, it is like a full 11 turnover. There's 8 players.
But I think Atleti look at it from the point of view of, they don't look at it like, say, a Man United where they're like, we absolutely belong at the top and we have to say that. I think they'll look at it as in like, wow, Simeone did an amazing job, got an amazing generation of players to do really well for us. We got 2 Champions League titles, we won the league, and now we do what we've done, you know, for the duration of our lifespan, we've rebuilt and we'll do it again.
I wonder if you're Atletico Madrid at this point in time, and we said this on the podcast, if you actually think Barcelona and Real Madrid are desperate to generate funds because they're in a position where, you know, they're being held to ransom to purchase certain talent, aren't they? Because they've not kind of future-proofed their sides the last couple of years, and the turnover of manager has led to a certain amount of scrambling. So do you go to those clubs with very reasonable offers for the likes of Odriozola, who obviously was brought in by Lopetegui, wasn't he, and is largely been unfancied towards the end of the season, and say, we'll give you your money back on Odriozola? Or do you go to Barcelona and say, listen, we know you want to sell Cucurella to Dortmund or to Sevilla, but would you be willing to sell him to us with the talent you're bringing in? It's probably not going to mean that the gulf in quality between the two sides is the Atletico Madrid are catching up on Barcelona. But if we give you 20 mil, 30 mil, and you get 30 mil for Andre Gomez, all of a sudden you've got half the money for, you know, a player that you want to bring in, because they're kind of 2 promising fullbacks that. Ibar took up the option to buy Cucurella, but Barcelona will no doubt buy him back. I think it's only for like 4 mil. And the season he's just put up at Ibar, prominently on the left wing, not a left back. I mean, the system that Mendilibar plays is really defensive, which shows in how many kind of shots they're conceded. I think they were the most watertight defence in La Liga in that regard. But Cucurella could definitely move to left back, and it kind of feels like, he could become like a really good player under someone like Simeone. But again, you're relying on rival clubs to do you a favour.
Any boys that Barca and Real shouldn't be selling this summer?
Well, Messi for Barca.
Well, obviously, boring answer.
But I'm not really sure. Apart from that, with Barcelona, I wouldn't care all that much.
Ter Stegen?
Yeah, Ter Stegen as well.
Ter Stegen, yeah.
That's basically it. Like, I mean, you wouldn't want to sell your centre backs, but like, it's not a disaster if you did.
Anyone for Real? Casemiro? I feel like he's a bit of a hole.
Yeah, they did have quite a down season. Varane, I would say.
Rafa Varane, yeah, they won't want to let him go for sure. But other than that, again, I feel like there's a fair few players they'd be happy to sell. I think the same could be said of like a Bayern Munich. I don't think Bayern Munich would be that arsed about losing anyone, even if they were to lose a Robert Lewandowski. Like, I can just imagine them going, okay, here's 70 for Timo.
I don't know. That would be a big drop off. I mean, like, Lewandowski had an absolutely insane season. Like, he actually had a down season finishing wise. Scored like 22 goals off like 29 expected goals. But without Lewandowski, they had no attack. And the reason that Gnabry had good numbers this season was almost entirely because of Lewandowski. Like, his creativity.
A lot of people disagreeing with that on Continental Club.
But I mean, it's just literally true. Like, you can go and look at it, the statistics, and if you watch the games as well, I mean, like, Lewandowski was like the creative hub of that side. Lewandowski's the guy who creates space for the guys around him. Lewandowski is the guy who gets shots in the box time and time and time again.
I really like Gnabry's season. I thought that Goretzka would be more impressive than Gnabry, but it looks like that Goretzka's the more likely to leave now.
I think for me, they're like they will definitely not want to lose Joshua Kimmich. Joshua Kimmich is a player they just will be 100% thinking that this is going to be a career-long.
And there's an absence of like
superstar.
£100 million fullbacks, isn't there? And he's one of them.
Yeah, exactly. I think he probably is the best right back in the world, to be totally honest. So they will just be desperate to keep hold of him.
It's quite, when you think about some of these top clubs that have been more vulnerable than they have been in kind of recent times, I just keep thinking like Poch would alleviate all these issues at a series of top clubs. Like, I kind of feel like Real Madrid, Barcelona, they've been so reliant on individuals as opposed to the team structure, shape, philosophy, you know, which Poch has got kind of brought to Tottenham, hasn't he? I think Valverde, Zidane, maybe not so much Zidane, but and maybe even Kovac, slightly lucky to kind of be in the position they are and have the talent they do at their disposal. It's the strong teams are just like I said, more vulnerable than they have been in times.
Anyone at Dortmund? Because obviously Jadon Sancho now seems more and more likely to stay, given that he's kind of Man United off due to the end of the season.
But it's not like they couldn't. I wouldn't want to lose him if I were them. But it's not like you couldn't afford to, in a way. Like, they actually have a lot of strength in attack.
Particularly with the signings of Torgan Hazard and Julian Brandt.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and Royce was absolutely incredible this season. Even Brun Larsen was good in limited minutes. Like, Paco obviously limited minutes as well, but great goal scoring numbers. Like, midfield.
Axel Witsel maybe. Like
I feel like he could replace him.
But like he was the epicenter of that team, wasn't he? Defensively and in terms of ball.
I feel like
possession.
Dortmund.
I don't know, he didn't do that much. I feel like their midfield didn't do that much defence. Like, their back, I wouldn't want to lose any members of the young members of their back line. I mean, like, particularly Diallo, I think, is
that's
like
purely because the talents you know
star.
they will be, right, as opposed to kind of how.
Well, Diallo was great this season, right?
Played at
Like,
left back
stepped in at
occasion
left back,
as well.
and also I think Guerrero's contract ends next summer,
Oof.
and obviously Hakimi's on loan. They've bought in Nico Schultz, but it is
I think
nice.
Hakimi's gone back to
But
Madrid now.
I thought they said the other day that they were like, there's no chance they're going to cut short the loan. He's going to stay for
That'd
next
be
year
great
as well.
news for Dortmund, because I read a bit from his dad that was like, yeah, he's returning to Madrid.
But Diallo was a centre back who, when he played out on the left side of the defence, he was completing like 2 dribbles a game.
Yeah,
like,
crazy.
And he is a big centre back, like, and he's an amazing passer. Like, Diallo to me is actually the most impressive in that back line, and I love Akanji and I love Zagadou, but Diallo's amazing.
Let's finish with PSG then. Anyone they can't afford to lose? Obviously, Kylian springs to mind pretty early doors,
Pretty
doesn't
good,
it?
isn't it?
Not too bad.
If ever a big side could afford to
Rabiot.
lose someone and not affect their domestic campaign, it is PSG. I think if they lose a Neymar or an Mbappe, the whole PSG project is set back by another 2 or 3 years, isn't it? I was thinking of right backs that people could go after then, and Denzel Dumfries springs to mind. He's had a great season at PSV. I feel like he might be ready to step it up in some sense. But going back to PSG, don't care.
I guess Verratti. Like, given that Lo Celso's gone, given that Rabiot's going to go, it would be quite a problem for them if they lost Verratti. You'd see their midfield take a big step backwards.
Do you know they
feel
could
like
really use now?
Marquinhos as well.
Probably Lo Celso.
Yeah.
I like to do
I feel like
everything in
Marquinhos-
midfield.
Imagine a
Marquinhos
3-man
is-
midfield of Verratti, Lo Celso and Rabiot.
Well, I imagine it's going to be like Herrera next season, isn't it? Instead, on a
And
free.
possibly Weigl. They're apparently going to try and get Weigl in,
And
which
they are
is
still heavily linked with De
a
Ligt.
weird one.
Heavily linked with Matthias De Ligt, which should be.
Their centre backs are pretty
What
okay.
if you're that Ajax side then, like, and you've already lost Frankie De Jong? It looks like the league's going to go. Who can't you lose following that? Is Ziyech the obvious answer?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I just think Ajax accept what they are. Like, they know they can lose. They know they can and will lose anyone at any time. They just have to back themselves to replace them. Like, I just feel like they're never in that situation where they're like, oh, we're losing Frankie is like detrimental. They're probably just thinking, brilliant, 80 million
Odegaard.
to put into the
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Odegaard. And also they look at their youth setup and they think, okay, we've got like Ryan Gravenberch, who's like coming through, who they've been raving about for years, has always been a super talent. So they'll be like, oh, great, more minutes for him.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't be too worried. But who do you guys think top clubs around Europe cannot afford to lose this summer? Ignore the obvious names, the Messis, the Ronaldos. Let us know in the comments below. Moving on to quickfire questions. We're going to keep this one quite short because that was a long answer. The first one comes in from Luke Visser, who says, who are the best fullbacks in the world in your opinion, left and right?
I feel like we've covered right, haven't we?
Joshua
Cancelo,
Kimmich, I think, is the best on the right-hand side.
And on-form Danny Carvajal is also absolutely incredible.
And then I think Andy Robertson's the best left-back in the world.
Jordi Alba is also really, really good this season.
Yeah, Jordi Alba.
Marcelo when he's fit, and Philon Mendy.
Pretty much covers it, doesn't it? Karam Arib says, if United could exchange 2 players from Real Madrid for Pogba, which would you go for?
Ooh, that is a good question actually. When I heard United, I kind of switched off. That is a good question. 2 players. Okay, so you desperately need a right winger, don't you? You desperate. I mean, I'd sure throw James in there. I mean, he broke through on the right at Monaco, and he's good enough to kind of have a big impact on the right still. I feel at a team like United, and if your chance creation, if there's going to be a vacuum in Pogba's absence, then James Rodriguez definitely helps out.
One of
with
them
that.
has to be Varane. Absolutely has to be Varane. If you go in there and
Sure.
they're desperate, United are
Sure, that's a
desperate
good
for a
answer,
young
centre-half.
centre-back, one of the best.
If you
in
could
the
get
world.
Varane and like Odriozola, then that would sort the right side of your defence.
Yeah, just desperate for Varane. Like if they're coming for
Asensio,
Pogba,
maybe.
United
I don't know.
have to just go. We want Varane. Like that's key because
Yeah.
he's just,
There's
he's
no way though.
So good. So good for United, Varane would be.
He's drooling.
So exciting.
So yeah, Varane. I would probably go
He
Varane
can't
and
solve
James.
everything on his own.
I would probably go Varane and James. I think would be my
Imagine
two.
having Sergio Ramos on your right and then replacing that with Phil Jones.
Yeah, shocking. No, mate. Give Victor
Varane.
Lindelof.
Absolute
Put some respect
scenes.
on Victor Lindelof's name. The
yeah,
next
Victor.
one is from Gopal Sharma, who says, will English clubs dominate Europe from now on like the Spanish clubs did, or will it go back to Spanish giants next season?
Then I think we need like Mystic Mike for this one, don't we?
Absolute Mystic Mike. Who knows? I'd imagine English clubs are going to be there to stay for a little bit, given the quality of coaching.
There's going to be a backlash from Barcelona and Madrid this summer, I feel. English clubs are just getting it, well, the kind of this and the transfer market, they've had it their own way for the last couple of years. But I imagine, I'll fly, that if they upgrade their manager, you know, Barcelona in particular, pretty quickly, and the talent in that squad galvanises, then Barcelona
They'll be
can't
back.
be too far off a final. Bloody hell. Like,
Yeah, they'll be
fucking
back.
sickening amount of talent in that squad.
Personal question then, this one was sent in by MU Jorgen, who says, first of Football Daily to become a parent, question mark? Who's it going to be? I'm backing Pato here.
I mean, like the odds would say it would be me.
The odds would say Pato.
Unless McCubbin's got like
An illegitimate
Something
child
yeah,
stored
dotted
away.
around
he's got
South America.
He's got some poor woman ready to pop like somewhere in the East End.
I think Pete Dorman is a potential candidate as well, Peter D.
Nah, his
No,
girlfriend's
wouldn't.
too clever. there's no way that she'll allow that to happen. Yoked to Dorman. for the
What
rest of
about
her life.
Hamill? Hamill's in about a 15-year relationship at this point.
Nah, zero chance.
No,
chance.
not until I'm like early 30s.
No, you know, I think it's Pato because he's the only member of FD with like
A house.
with a house and a pet
And a wife.
and a wife as well. Yeah.
Also a wife.
Although, actually,
Jackson.
if you include Jackson, it's
Jackson.
now.
Expected babies puts Pat at about 0.7, I reckon. So yeah,
What, now?
Jackson maybe.
Yeah. I think expected babies put Jackson about 1.
Yeah,
I reckon Jackson's about even odds to Popsy.
He's just got back from the Bahamas as well. That's kind of like
Yeah, you know what's coming.
that's where babies are made.
You know what's coming.
Pig
Ed's
Island,
house. I would
rolling
go-
around in the muck.
I would go Dave Jackson. Either way, that's it for this week's episode of Sunday Vibes. If you've got any questions next week, be
Significantly
sure to
stronger
follow
at the
us
start of the episode.
100%. On Twitter, that's where we find our questions, or in the comments below this video. Thanks very much for watching. Haven't plugged anything today. Go and download the podcast.
Yeah, Olivia's podcast as well. Star Wars. Bye.
Bye.